People always say, stop overthinking. But have you ever noticed that the more you try to stop thinking, the louder your mind becomes? That's the paradox. The war against your own mind is the very thing keeping awake at night. You see, silence cannot be forced. Peace isn't something you chase. It's what remains when you stop running. Yet, we live in an age that treats overthinking like a disease, something to fix, cure, and eliminate. But what if overthinking isn't the enemy? What if it's a misunderstood messenger? The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." Most people interpret that as a call to control their thoughts. But the deeper message isn't about control. It's about creation. Your thoughts are not chains. They are blueprints. And overthinking, when seen correctly, is simply your creative power misdirected. We call it mental noise. But that noise is your mind's way of trying to protect you, to understand the chaos around you. The problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is that you think in circles, repeating what you already know instead of daring to explore what you don't. When people say be present, they often mean turn your mind off. But presence doesn't mean silence. It means awareness. You can think deeply and still be present. You can feel the storm inside and still be at peace if you stop identifying with the storm. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine once spent years chasing peace. Meditation retreats, sound baths, yoga classes, you name it. He tried every way to quiet his mind. But one day, sitting by a busy street, he realized something strange. The cars were rushing by. The city was loud. And yet he felt calm, not because the noise stopped, but because he stopped demanding silence. That was the moment he understood. Peace isn't found in quiet places. It's found in a quiet perspective. The more you try to suppress overthinking, the more it mutates into anxiety, like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. The goal isn't to stop overthinking. The goal is to let thinking flow through you without resistance. You're not supposed to kill your thoughts. You're supposed to witness them, like clouds drifting through the sky of your awareness. Here's the truth no one tells you. Overthinking is just thinking without courage. You replay the past because you're too afraid to face the present. You imagine the future because you don't trust yourself to handle uncertainty. It's not about too many thoughts. It's about too little faith. And faith isn't blind belief. It's acceptance. Acceptance that the river of life doesn't always flow where you expect, but it always flows forward. In the original Buddhist teaching, the present moment isn't something to cling to. It's something to live through. The monks didn't sit still because they wanted to escape the world. They sat still because they had already made peace with it. Let's challenge one of the most common ideas. Live in the moment. Sounds beautiful, right? But have you ever realized that living only in the moment is impossible? The moment you think about being in the moment, it's already gone. The truth is, life isn't made of moments. It's made of movement. The river never asks itself to freeze. Why should you? Overthinking, when channeled, becomes reflection. Reflection, when refined, becomes wisdom. So, the question isn't, how do I stop overthinking? The question is, how can I let my thoughts work for me, not against me? Take the example of the sculptor. When they look at a block of marble, they don't curse the stone for being too solid. They carve through it patiently, knowing that within that weight lies a masterpiece. Your mind is that block of marble. Overthinking is your raw material. Peace is what appears when you carve away what's unnecessary. But here's the paradox again. If you attack your thoughts, you only make them stronger. The more you fear them, the more they fight back. Because fear is fuel for thought. So instead of fighting, observe. Instead of resisting, allow. And instead of asking, why can't I stop thinking? Ask, what is my mind trying to teach me right now? I once read a story from a Buddhist teacher about a young monk who complained that he couldn't meditate because his thoughts were too loud. The master smiled and said, "Good. Now you know the sound of your mind. Keep listening until it becomes music. That's the key. Don't silence your thoughts. Tune them." Our culture celebrates productivity, speed, constant stimulation. But overthinking is what happens when your mind keeps running long after the body has stopped. You lie awake at 2 a.m. not because you want to, but because your soul is still trying to process the day you didn't have time to feel. So maybe peace isn't about thinking less. Maybe it's about feeling more. Because every thought you avoid eventually becomes a feeling you can't escape. There's another layer to this paradox. We say we want inner peace, but deep down, many of us are terrified of it. Because peace feels like emptiness at first. And emptiness threatens our sense of identity. If I'm not my worries, not my plans, not my pain, then who am I? The answer is unsettling. You are what's left when everything else is gone. And that's what scares people into clinging to their thoughts. Overthinking gives them a sense of control, a sense of self. But true peace isn't control, it's surrender. In Buddhism, this surrender is not defeat, it's alignment. The river doesn't fight the current. It moves with it. So stop trying to stop thinking. Instead, let your thoughts run their course. Watch them exhaust themselves, like a child throwing a tantrum. Eventually, they grow quiet not because you force them to, but because you outgrew them. Let me end with this. The mind is a storyteller. It will create 1,000 narratives about what could go wrong, what might have been, what you should have said. But here's the twist. None of those stories are happening right now. You are, right here, reading this, breathing this moment into existence. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky that holds them. The clouds may come and go, but the sky remains untouched, unbroken, infinite. And maybe that's what peace truly is. Not an empty mind, but a vast one, wide enough to let every thought pass without fear. We live in a world obsessed with control. We measure success by how much we can manage, predict, and command. We control our schedules, our bodies, our image, even our emotions. And when life slips out of our hands, as it always does, we panic, spiral, overthink. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Control is a beautiful illusion. You never really had it. You just thought you did. Every time we try to force reality to obey our expectations, life quietly smiles and reminds us it was never ours to control in the first place. The more we grip, the more we suffer. The more we plan, the more anxious we become when plans fall apart. And yet we call it being responsible. But maybe the bravest thing you can do isn't to tighten your grip. It's to release it. Buddhism teaches suffering is not caused by what happens to us, but by our attachment to it. That's not a poetic quote. It's a blueprint for freedom. The root of overthinking lies in attachment to an outcome, to a person, to an image of how life should be. We overthink because we secretly believe, if I can understand everything, I can control everything. But you can't. You can understand the weather, but you can't stop the rain. There's a story of a monk and a traveler that captures this perfectly. A traveler, exhausted from walking under the scorching sun, asked a monk how he managed to look so calm even when the heat was unbearable. The monk said, "Because I stopped trying to control the sun." That line isn't about the weather. It's about life. When you stop fighting what is, you begin to find peace in what could be. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving space. It's allowing things to unfold without forcing them to follow your timeline. The universe doesn't rush, yet everything gets done. But we, trapped in our need for certainty, rush through our own existence. You see, control feels safe. It gives us the illusion of power. But in truth, the tight grip of control is a form of fear. Fear that if you stop steering, everything will crash. Fear that without your effort, the world will fall apart. But here's the paradox. The more you force life, the more it resists you. And the more you allow life to move as it will, the more it begins to align with you. Think of a river. If you jump in and try to swim upstream, you exhaust yourself. But when you surrender to the flow, something miraculous happens. You're carried. You move faster, easier, freer. That's the quiet power of surrender. It doesn't demand. It receives. Our culture glorifies the opposite. Be in control of your destiny. Take charge of your life. But control doesn't equal power. It equals pressure. And pressure, sustained too long, breaks the spirit. What if real power isn't in the ability to control, but in the ability to remain centered even when everything falls apart? When life changes, and it always will, the only question that matters is, can you stay still inside the storm? That's not weakness. That's mastery. I once met a man who lost everything, his job, his marriage, his home, all in a single year. He told me, for months, I kept trying to fix it all. Every night, I made new plans, new strategies. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. Then one morning, I woke up and just stopped. I stopped fighting. I sat in the chaos and accepted it. And strangely, that's when things started moving again. Within a year, he rebuilt, not what he lost, but something better, not because he controlled life, but because he cooperated with it. Surrender isn't laziness. It's intelligence. The tree bends with the wind, so it doesn't break. The ocean yields to gravity, yet it shapes continents. The power of nature lies in its flexibility, not its resistance. So why do we imagine strength must look like control? There's an ancient Buddhist metaphor. A man tries to push a boulder uphill. No matter how hard he tries, it doesn't move. Finally, exhausted, he collapses. And only then does he realize he's been trying to move a mountain that wasn't meant to move. We all have our mountains, our impossible expectations, our need to make everything perfect. But peace doesn't come from conquering mountains. It comes from knowing which ones are worth climbing, and which ones you should simply sit beside and admire. Overthinking thrives in the soil of control. You think, what if I had done more? What if I lose this? What if things go wrong? But every what if is just your mind trying to resist impermanence. And impermanence is the only thing guaranteed. Here's the strange beauty of letting go. When you stop forcing outcomes, life begins to surprise you. The job you didn't get pushes you toward the opportunity you were meant for. The relationship that ended creates space for a deeper one. The failure you fear becomes a foundation for your growth. It's as if life waits for you to loosen your grip before it shows you what it's been holding all along. But surrender takes courage, because when you let go of control, you also let go of certainty. And certainty is addictive. It makes us feel safe, even when it's false. But safety and peace are not the same thing. Safety is the cage. Peace is the open sky. So, the real question is, do you want to be safe or do you want to be free? Freedom requires trust. Not blind trust in fate, but deep trust in your ability to adapt. When you accept that you can't control the outcome, but you can control your response, you become unstoppable. That's the paradox. By surrendering control, you gain real control over yourself. The Buddha said, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. If you constantly think in fear, you create a fearful world. But if you think with faith, you create space for peace to grow. Faith isn't about believing everything will go your way. It's believing you'll be okay even when it doesn't. Let's get practical for a moment. The next time your mind spirals with what-ifs, ask yourself 2 questions. Is this within my control? If not, why am I carrying it? When you start to separate what's yours from what's not, your mental load becomes lighter. You don't need to fix every situation. You don't need to win every battle. Sometimes, peace comes from losing beautifully. Look at water again. It never fights obstacles. It finds a way around them. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Water doesn't demand the world to change. It shapes itself to fit the world. And in doing so, it eventually shapes the world itself. That's the secret. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. When you stop clinging to control, you stop feeding chaos. When you stop overthinking, you stop creating imaginary battles. You begin to see that life was never out to get you. It was just waiting for you to stop getting in its way. So, the next time you feel yourself drowning in the noise of your own thoughts, don't try to calm the sea. Calm yourself. The storm outside only mirrors the one within. And when your mind grows still, even the waves seem to bow. We spend so much of our lives trying to find peace, as if peace were some rare treasure buried beneath the noise of our own minds. We light candles, play soft music, read mindfulness quotes, and tell ourselves to breathe deeply. Yet the very act of chasing peace makes it run further away. The harder you try to silence your thoughts, the louder they become. The more you want to stop overthinking, the more your mind turns into an echo chamber of noise. That's the great paradox, the illusion of calm. You cannot find peace by hunting it down. You find peace only when you stop demanding it to appear. People often imagine peace as stillness, like a perfectly quiet lake untouched by wind. But real peace is not the absence of motion. It's the ability to remain centered even as waves crash around you. A monk once told me, the storm isn't outside you, it's the air you breathe. And he was right. Peace isn't about making life calm. It's about learning to stay calm while life remains wild. When you realize this, you stop fearing chaos. You begin to see that calm and chaos are not enemies. They are twins born from the same mother called awareness. If you destroy one, the other dies too. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young man who sought enlightenment. He left his city, his job, and his relationships to live in a quiet monastery in the mountains. For years he meditated, repeating mantras and chasing inner stillness. One morning, after yet another sleepless night of frustration, he approached his master and said, I have been doing everything right, yet my mind refuses to stay silent. It keeps spinning. I cannot control it. The master smiled and handed him a glass of muddy water. Watch, he said, placing the glass on the table. Minutes passed in silence. Slowly, the mud settled to bottom and the water turned clear. You see, the master said, peace is not something you achieve. It's what remains when you stop shaking the glass. That story changed me, because we're all shaking our own glass every day, through overthinking, resisting, analyzing, trying too hard to fix everything. We stir the mud and then curse the water for being unclear. The truth is, peace was never gone. We just refuse to stop stirring long enough to see it. And that's what most people don't understand about mindfulness. It's not about being calm. It's about not needing to be calm. The more you accept your mental storms, the faster they pass. In the modern world, peace has become a product. It's sold in retreats, journals, podcasts, and even scented candles. We are told that if we just buy enough tools, download the right app, or follow a morning routine, we'll finally stop overthinking. But the human mind doesn't work that way. It's not a switch you can turn off. It's a vast ocean that needs space, not control. The goal is not to silence the mind. It's to make friends with it. To realize that your thoughts are not enemies to be defeated, but waves to be surfed. You don't need to escape them. You need to ride them with grace. Think about this. If your mind is constantly active, that means it's alive. Overthinking, in its raw form, is just untrained intelligence running wild. You don't need to kill it. You need to teach it how to dance. Instead of fighting your thoughts, invite them to speak. Let them rise, let them fall. Observe them with the patience of a mountain, watching clouds drift across its peak. The mountain doesn't chase the clouds. It simply stays. And somehow, that stillness becomes the most powerful movement of all. The illusion we live with is that peace means perfection, that to be at peace, our life must be free from conflict, fear, or doubt. But peace isn't a clean, polished room. It's a messy, breathing, living process. Sometimes you'll sit in silence and feel restless. Sometimes your breath will tremble. That's okay. The river doesn't stop flowing just because the water gets rough. True peace is messy, human, raw. It's not the kind you frame on a quote card. It's the kind you live through in the middle of your chaos. So perhaps the real path to calm isn't about meditating in stillness, but about meditating inside the storm. Not try to calm the waves, but learning to surf with your eyes open. The goal is not to become empty. It's to become aware. Once you see the noise clearly, it loses its power over you. You begin to notice the small spaces between your thoughts, the moments of silence that were always there, but drowned by your need to control. That silence is your real peace. It doesn't need effort. It just needs permission. And maybe that's the greatest irony of all. The moment you stop trying to find peace, you realize it was sitting quietly inside you the whole time, waiting for you to stop searching. The glass clears not because you fight the mud, but because you stop shaking the water. Life doesn't need to be still for you to feel peaceful. You just need to stop trying so hard to make it still. Once you let go of that struggle, peace flows in like breath itself, natural, effortless, inevitable. We spend most of our lives trying to run away from uncertainty. We want clear answers, solid plans, predictable outcomes. We want life to obey our calendar, our goals, our logic. And when it doesn't, when the ground beneath us starts to shift, our mind panics. Anxiety floods in. But what if anxiety isn't your enemy? What if it's your greatest teacher disguised as discomfort? We've been told that anxiety means something's wrong, that it's a sign of weakness, instability, or a mind that's lost control. But in truth, anxiety is the mind's way of reminding you that you are alive. It's not a malfunction, it's a signal. It's the raw pulse of existence saying, you are standing at the edge of something new. Because uncertainty doesn't appear when life is dead. It appears when life is moving. Every great change, every rebirth begins with uncertainty. The seed buried in the soil doesn't know if it will ever break through the darkness, yet it pushes upward anyway. That's not comfort. That's courage. The world worships control. We measure our worth by how much we can predict, how much we can secure, how much we can manage. But life was never meant to be managed. It was meant to be lived. The Buddha taught impermanence, but we misheard him. We took everything changes as a warning when it was actually a gift. Change means possibility. Uncertainty means freedom. Without it, we'd be trapped in the sameness of what we already know. No growth, no depth, no transformation. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a forest at night. The path ahead is dark, filled with unknown sounds, strange shadows. Your heart races. Your mind screams for certainty. A map, a light, a guarantee that nothing bad will happen. But what if, instead of fighting that fear, you welcomed it? What if anxiety was just the sound of your soul waking up to the vastness of what lies ahead? Fear is not the end of peace. It's the doorway to it. It's the tension between what you were and what you're becoming. I once met a woman who told me she used to have panic attacks every night before sleep. Her chest would tighten. Her breathing would race. Her mind would spiral into every possible catastrophe. She hated herself for it. "Why can't I be calm like everyone else?" she said. But then one day, during one of those panic episodes, she stopped fighting. She sat on the floor, cried, and said aloud, "Okay, if you're here to destroy me, go ahead." And something shifted. The fear didn't vanish, but it lost its grip. It was as if the storm realized it no longer needed to prove anything. She later told me, "That was the night I realized I didn't need to win against fear. I just needed to stop treating it like an enemy." That's when she started healing. Anxiety is not an error message from your brain. It's a compass. It points toward the places you need to explore, not avoid. When you feel uneasy, it's usually because life is inviting you into something unfamiliar. We call it overthinking. But maybe it's overfeeling. Your intuition whispering that something inside you is ready to evolve. If you numb it, you silence that call. But if you listen with compassion, it begins to guide you gently instead of torturing you. Here's the paradox. The more you try to eliminate uncertainty, the more anxious you become. Because the act of fighting uncertainty is anxiety. You can't escape what you're still resisting. The real path to peace isn't in controlling your life. It's in expanding your tolerance for not knowing. Once you stop needing to know everything, you become free. Freedom doesn't come from answers. It comes from trust. And trust doesn't mean believing that everything will turn out well. It means believing that you'll be okay, even if it doesn't. In Buddhism, impermanence isn't just a truth about the world. It's a medicine for mind. When you realize that everything changes, including your fear, your mind begins to soften. You stop demanding guarantees and start appreciating the mystery. Because mystery isn't chaos. It's life in its rawest, most honest form. The moment you stop labeling uncertainty as a threat, it transforms into wonder. The same feeling that once made you tremble now makes you curious. Think of a child standing at the edge of the ocean for the first time. They don't know how deep it is, how strong the waves are, or what creatures live below. But their eyes are wide with awe, not fear. That's the essence of spiritual maturity. Learning to face the ocean of the unknown not with terror, but with reverence. The water may be cold. The waves may knock you down. But if you stay long enough, you begin to float. When you stop demanding that life be certain, you begin to breathe again. You stop carrying the weight of what if. You start trusting the dance of impermanence. That even if you fall, something inside you will rise. The same energy that created your fears also holds your strength. Anxiety and courage are two sides of the same flame. One burns when you resist it. The other lights your way when you accept it. So next time anxiety visits, don't run. Sit with it. Offer it tea. Ask it what it's trying to teach you. Because anxiety, in its truest form, is not there to hurt you. It's there to wake you. It's the soul's alarm clock ringing, saying it's time to grow. The moment you stop seeing it as punishment, it becomes a path. The wave that once drowned you now carry you forward. And maybe, just maybe, peace isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's learning to dance inside it. Most people see suffering as something to escape from, a dark tunnel we must rush through just to reach the light at the end. But what if suffering is a light, disguised in a painful form? What if the pain you run from is actually the teacher you've been praying for? We've been told that peace is the opposite of pain, that happiness begins only when suffering ends. Yet every wise person who ever walked this earth, Buddha, Rumi, Nietzsche, even your grandmother, whispered the same secret. Suffering doesn't destroy you, it refines you. It is not your enemy, it is your initiation. We live in a world obsessed with comfort. We chase instant relief, emotional shortcuts, spiritual quick fixes. We want to feel better without actually becoming different. But comfort never transformed anyone. Growth requires friction. It's the pressure of experience that shapes the diamond within us. Without darkness, light is just decoration. Without loss, love remains theory. Suffering is not punishment, it's participation. It's life asking, are you ready to meet yourself? Think about it. Every person you admire didn't become who they are because life was easy. They became unshakable because something once broke them. The strength you see in their eyes was carved by pain, not privilege. There's a Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with veins of gold. The cracks are not hidden, they're illuminated. Each fracture becomes part of the beauty. That's what suffering does to the soul. It breaks you open, then fills the cracks with wisdom. You don't come out flawless. You come out luminous. But here's the paradox most people miss. The more you resist suffering, the deeper it cuts. The more you try to numb it, the more it demands to be felt. Pain doesn't need to be escaped. It needs to be embraced. Because inside that pain is information, truth about who you are, what you value, what you've been avoiding. When you stop running and finally listen, pain becomes language. It speaks softly at first, then clearly. Here is where you need to heal. There was once a story told by a Zen master about a student who came to him angry and weeping. Why do I keep suffering? The student asked. The master poured a cup of hot tea until it overflowed, spilling onto the table. Why did you do that? The student shouted. The master smiled and said, because you were like this cup, full of your own expectations. Until you empty yourself, no new wisdom can enter. The student's silence that day was the first moment of his real learning. That's how suffering works. It empties you, sometimes violently, so that you can finally hold something true. We try to outthink our pain, to rationalize it, to justify it, to analyze every scar until it becomes data. But wisdom doesn't grow through analysis. It grows through surrender. Pain invites humility. It strips away the arrogance of control, the illusion of certainty, the noise of ego. It brings you to your knees not to destroy you, but to remind you where real prayer begins. The world calls it breakdown. The soul calls it breakthrough. Look at nature. The seed must split apart before the tree can grow. The caterpillar dissolves completely before the butterfly takes flight. Fire destroys the forest, but only then does new life emerge from the ash. We call it suffering. Nature calls it transformation. So, why do we think we're any different? Every heartbreak, every failure, every sleepless night is not the end of your peace. It's the doorway to a deeper one. And if you look back at your life, you'll realize something. The moments that hurt you the most were also the moments that revealed you to yourself. You learned compassion because someone once broke your heart. You learned patience because something took longer than you expected. You learn resilience because you had no other choice. Suffering didn't steal your light. It forged it. Every scar is a sentence in the story of your becoming. But to see this, you must stop labeling pain as bad. There is no good or bad in the language of the soul, only awakening. Some awaken gently through joy, others through heartbreak. The method doesn't matter. The awakening does. And once you awaken, you begin to see that suffering is not the opposite of peace. It's the path to it. Pain isn't a curse. It's an invitation to become whole. When the Buddha spoke of suffering, dukkha, he wasn't trying to make us fearful. He was revealing the most compassionate truth, that life hurts, and that's okay, because within that hurt lies the seed of liberation. You don't have to fix the pain. You have to understand it. Once you understand it, it loses its poison and becomes medicine. And here's the final reversal. Suffering doesn't just make you wise. It makes you kind. It humbles the heart. Once you walk through your own darkness, you stop judging others for theirs. You begin to listen deeper, love softer, forgive faster. The people who carry peace in their eyes are not the ones who avoided pain. They're the ones who've made peace with it. Their stillness is not emptiness. It's full of stories, full of storms, full of strength. So the next time life breaks you open, don't ask, why me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? Because every breakdown contains a blueprint. Every wound hides wisdom. The suffering you resist today will become the compassion you offer tomorrow. That is the silent revolution. Not fighting your pain, but allow it to transform you. In the end, peace is not something you earn after you stop suffering. Peace is what remains when suffering finishes its work. It's not the absence of storms. It's the gentle smile you carry after the storm has passed. Know you can survive anything. And that is the quiet miracle of life. Pain teaches, breaks, rebuilds, and finally leaves behind a version of you that no longer fears it. You become both the scar and the light that shines through it. You become whole not because life spared you from suffering, but because you finally understood that suffering was never the enemy. It was a teacher waiting for you to listen. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when they realize that peace isn't something to be found. It's something to be remembered. The world will never stop moving. Noise will never truly fade. The economy will shake. People will leave. Dreams will collapse. And plans will dissolve like mist. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, there exists a still point, a quiet awareness untouched by time, untouched by fear. That stillness is you. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. We've been conditioned to believe that peace is somewhere out there, in the next success, the next vacation, the next relationship, the next version of ourselves. We keep chasing it like a mirage, only to find that every time we get close, it moves further away, because peace is not a destination. It's a direction inward. You don't find calmness by controlling the storm. You find it by realizing you were never the wind in the first place. Here's the paradox. The more you try to control your world, the more you lose control of your mind. The more you chase stillness, the more restless you become. Because stillness doesn't come from doing more. It comes from not needing to do. It's not an achievement. It's a recognition that nothing external can complete what was never missing. The greatest spiritual trap is believing you must become peaceful. The truth is, you already are. You've just forgotten the sound of your own silence. Imagine standing in the middle of a busy city. Cars honking, people shouting, screens glowing, notifications vibrating. And yet, for a moment, you close your eyes and everything fades. You feel your breath. You hear your heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, there is infinite space. The chaos doesn't disappear. It simply loses its power. You realize that peace isn't the absence of noise, but the absence of resistance. You stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. And suddenly, what used to disturb you becomes background music. But the world will test this peace. Every day, people will misunderstand you. Life will demand your energy. You will lose things you thought you couldn't live without. And that's when the real practice begins. Not escaping, not pretending, but remaining. True peace isn't fragile. It doesn't shatter when someone disagrees with you. It doesn't vanish when plans change. It's the kind of peace that breathes with the world, not against it. In Zen they say, when walking, walk. When eating, eat. It sounds simple, but it's the deepest wisdom you'll ever hear. Because peace lives in presence, and presence is always now. The mind loves to live in what ifs and what next. But life only happens in this breath, this step, this sound. You can't think your way into peace. You can only return to it one breath at a time. The still point isn't found by force. It's revealed through surrender. When you stop trying to fix every emotion, when you stop fighting what is, a doorway opens. You start to see that everything, even pain, even confusion, is part of the same sacred rhythm. You stop dividing the world into good and bad, wanted and unwanted. You start to see it all as energy, moving, teaching, balancing. And in that seeing, judgment turns to understanding, tension turns to softness, and chaos turns to dance. You begin to live differently. You stop rushing to arrive, because you see you were already home. You stop trying to be special, because you realize everything is sacred. You stop fearing endings, because you understand that every ending is just life-changing shape. You no longer need to chase peace. You become peace. The noise of the world doesn't fade, but your relationship to it transforms. It no longer defines you. It moves through you. And maybe that's the secret the wise ones are trying to tell us all along. That peace isn't about escaping the world, but embracing it so deeply that even its chaos feels like prayer. That the purpose of meditation isn't to escape thoughts, but to see through them. That enlightenment isn't somewhere high above, but right here, in the simplicity of awareness that watches everything come and go. When you reach that point, you don't need to preach calmness. Your presence does it for you. You walk slower, speak softer, listen deeper. You stop needing to prove or defend. You stop competing with noise. You just are, and your stillness becomes contagious. People around you begin to slow down too, without even knowing why. You become the still point in a spinning world. So if the world feels heavy, don't try to escape it. Let it move through you. Feel every ounce of it. Then remember, beneath it all, you are the watcher, not the waves. The silence beneath every sound, the breath beneath every word. The chaos will come and go, but the stillness, your stillness, will remain. That is where true peace lives. Not in control, not in escape, not in perfection, but in the unshakable knowing that you're the sky, not the storm. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when everything inside you finally exhales. You stop chasing, you stop fixing, you stop running towards some perfect version of peace. And in that stillness, you realize you were never lost. You were simply asleep, dreaming that you were separate from the world you belonged to. All the searching, all the questions, all the pain, it was never meant to punish you. It was meant to wake you. Every sleepless night, every overthought decision, every silent tear you never told anyone about, they were not signs of weakness. They were the language of your becoming. The universe never wanted you to be perfect. It wanted you to be aware. And awareness changes everything. The moment you see clearly, The illusion of chaos dissolves. You realize that life was never against you. It was always guiding you through confusion, through loss, through everything you once called too much. Every crack in your heart was a doorway. Every fall was a form of flight. Every ending was just a new name for beginning. Maybe peace was never something you needed to find. Maybe it was something trying to find you through the noise, through the pain, through the chaos of overthinking. And now that you've stopped running, it finally can. The masters always said, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing outside changes. The world keeps spinning, people keep talking, storms keep coming. But inside, everything shifts. The same life now feels lighter, clearer, softer, because you've learned the secret. Peace is not what happens when life calms down. It's what appears when you do. Look around. The sky has always been this blue. The breath has always been this close. The silence has always been waiting beneath the noise. You just forgot how to listen. So now listen, not to the world, but to the space beneath it. The space that watches, that witnesses, that never changes no matter what happens. That is you. You are not the thought. You are not the storm. You are the awareness that holds them both. When you understand this, the war inside you ends. You stop trying to silence your mind, and instead, you learn to sit beside it. You stop fearing uncertainty, because you see that even the unknown is part of the same dance. You stop needing life to be perfect, because you realize it already is, perfect in its imperfection, sacred in its simplicity, whole in its constant change. And in that realization, something beautiful happens, gratitude. Not the kind you force, but the kind that rises naturally when you see how everything, even pain, has been serving your becoming. You begin to thank the moments you once cursed. You begin to see how suffering carved wisdom, how stillness grew from surrender, how overthinking led you home. So let this be a reminder. You were never broken. You were just unfolding. Every version of you, the anxious, the lost, the healing, the peaceful, they were all steps of the same dance. There was never a wrong move, only rhythm. As this journey ends, take a breath. Feel it. That's peace. Not a grand revelation, not a lightning strike. Just this, right here, presence. Awareness, life as it is. And maybe that's what awakening truly is. Not becoming something more, but remember what you've always been. The stillness beneath the storm, the light within the shadow, the infinite in the ordinary. So go live, go feel, go fall and rise again. The world will keep spinning, but you will remain the still point. And from that stillness, everything will finally make sense, because you've come home, not to a place not to believe, but to yourself. There comes a quiet moment when everything stops, not because the world finally calms down, but because you do. For so long, you've been searching for peace as if it were somewhere outside of you, hidden behind success, love, or control. But what if peace was never lost? What has been waiting inside you all along, covered only by noise, fear, and the endless spinning of thoughts that told you you're not enough, not safe, not ready? Overthinking was never your enemy. It was your invitation. It was the universe whispering, look closer. What are you really afraid to feel? And when you stop running from that question, when you finally turn around and face your mind, something shifts. The chaos doesn't disappear, but it loses its power. You start to see that peace was never about controlling the storm, but about remembering that you are the sky. Every cloud, every thought, every worry drifts across your mind like weather, temporary, ever-changing, powerless unless you cling to it. The Buddha never taught us to escape life. He taught us to see it fully, completely, without hiding from it. To understand that the noise and the silence, the joy and the sorrow, are not opposites. They are partners in the same dance. When you realize that, the need to fight disappears. You stop trying to perfect every detail, to fix every flaw, to predict every outcome. Instead, you begin to live, really live, right here, right now. And that's where awakening begins. Not in temples or retreats, but in the small, sacred spaces between thoughts. In the breath you take before you speak. In the pause between doubt and acceptance. In the way you finally forgive yourself for not being perfect. Because perfection was never the point. Presence was, and presence is what you are returning to now. You are not your worries, not your mistakes, not your mind running in circles at 2 a.m. You're the awareness behind it, the stillness watching the storm. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. You understand that your struggles weren't curses. They were teachers. Every sleepless night shaped your compassion. Every disappointment softened your heart. Every moment you thought you were breaking was actually the universe carving space for light to enter. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wrong. It was all part of your unfolding. Messy, beautiful, human. So breathe. Right now. Feel the air fill your chest. That's not just oxygen. That's proof that life still believes in you. You don't need to chase calm. You are calm. You don't need to seek love. You are love. You don't need to fight for peace. You are peace. And once you realize that, the noise starts to fade. The world doesn't change, but the way you see it does. The same chaos that once terrified you now feels like movement, rhythm, life itself. So as this video ends, don't scroll away. Sit with this silence for just a few seconds. Let it remind you of who you are when you stop overthinking. Infinite, whole, awake. If this message touched something inside you, share it. Let someone else know they're not broken. They're becoming. Subscribe if you want to walk this journey with us, one mindful breath at a time. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more awareness. And that begins with you. So, stay here for a moment longer. Close your eyes. Inhale. Exhale. That's it. That's peace. You've already found it.